What's going on, you guys? So today I think it's time that we get started on a car that's near and dear to my heart, that's going to need a ton of work, but it's time for us to get it done. Here we've got my slicktop. You guys have probably seen in the background, you have seen this chilling back here, whatever. It's hanging out in the yard. This is pretty much my first Z. It's not really my first one, it's my second Z. It's the one I've driven the most. It's the one that really got me hooked on these cars, and it's one I will never get rid of. And there's a couple of them that I'm not very happy with that I would really like to fix so I can have a proper car. So here right now, I've currently got it loaded with tons of parts that I want to use on it or switch out. My idea with it is to have an NATT setup that runs on pump gas that doesn't exceed 7 psi, so that way it stays without of reach of detonation. And I'm going to show you guys the damage we're dealing with that we're going to fix on this. And if you guys are familiar with Pizza Mike's channel, which I'm sure some of you are because a lot of you guys actually came from him, he's repairing his 240 by entire panels via the spot welds the correct way after it was totaled. Mine was totaled at some point, has been rebuilt, but it's not actually rebuilt. Let me show you one of the first things. You can see right here, it's been rear-ended. You can see cracks in the paint. The bumper is not straight by any means, it's bowed in. This latch is pointed upwards instead of flush. My hatch does not actually shut, has a huge gap. That being said, we want to revamp this car, bring it back to its former glory, especially since I don't really have the money. Say I assume to do all this panel work, paint and stuff, I'm looking at over $10,000. I don't have that kind of money, so we're going to try to do this ourselves. Mike inspired us, just prove that really you can do anything you set your mind to, even if you don't know how. First, let's show you the underside. This will kind of give you an idea. See that frame rail? It's supposed to be straight, and that has a huge kink in it. This side is supposed to be straight, has a huge kink in it. So they need replaced. The whole floor pan needs replaced. You can see how all this floor is bent and crinkled up. You can see that all on the bottom side. None of the panels fit correctly. Bolt holes are broken, or studs are broken, bolt holes are misaligned, 4 interior panels, all because of this. So we're gonna fix it. Since we just so happen to have a parts car here that is a 2+0, floorboards, frame rails, pinch welds, and rocker panels are all completely rotted out. We've went ahead and removed our first panel. Sat in here about like that, so you can see kind of, or at least have an idea of what we have to do here. My pilot hole is a little bit too large, so my spot weld bit wanders. I have to get new spot weld bits, so we haven't continued on this yet, but we will do that as soon as we get a drivetrain in this car. Under this door panel, in these parcel trays, we have an engine. This is the engine that was in our Black Z. Also have a spare transmission that we've had stored away, and we're going to use it to put in the car. We're going to put the drivetrain in the car so we can move the car around, so that way we can store it here in the barn, not have to worry about being exposed to the elements. So that way once we do fully get all of our panels drilled out of our Black Z, then we can start to drill and remove on this. Need to get a come along, some chains, some other cars. We're going to try to pull that rear end out a little bit so all the metal's kind of relieved, and it should be easier to remove. Everything won't be folded and pinched up. But enough chatting, let's get this pulled up in here. Got our water pipes off, and we're going to work on getting our timing covers off. With our crank at top dead center, so far every single one of our marks on our timing gears is lined up. So I think we're good to go there. Pull this off, examine our cast pin on the cam and our actual cast drive. and we're gonna count these teeth just to make sure. That should be it. I didn't see any wear to the cast pin. It wasn't out around or anything. If anything, there's a very slight amount where it's worn, where it makes contact on the flat side. Looks to be half moon to me, like it's really not that worn out. So we're gonna get to putting everything back together. It's been an hour. Now it's time to torque down our coolant pipes. Now we're all torqued and ready to put it in the car. If you guys remember from our last video, we just had to take our clutch master and all of our assorted lines out. May just order another one-piece clutch line, and I have a slave, so we'll do some thinking and let you know. Due to this strictly right here and how I can't just pull the whole assembly out, put it in that car without having to bleed it, I don't think I'm going to worry about it. That just seems like too much of a hassle. Now I'm on the fence. Do I want to pull the AC system out and put it in now? We'll worry about all that later. Let's get to dropping the motor in. I'm tired of procrastinating myself. So we just replaced this old nasty J power steering hose with the new silicone one that I've had sitting back for a while. Now let's get this thing pushed in here. Get our heart transplanted. Let's see about how long it takes me to raise this, drop it with broken wheels, start. So we're currently at 5 minutes. We stopped the clock. However, I did notice something, and I'm glad I noticed before I dropped the engine in. We don't have a wiring harness in it yet. So we're going to take these brackets off, take our inside bracket off behind the AC box, and we're going to drop this out. Wiring harness has been acquired. Now let's snake it into the car. And it's totally in now. Stop the clock. 9 minutes and 30 seconds. That's not horrible. We've definitely had better, but our light died on us. We had to grab another light. We had to grab our wiring harness, and then we had to put the brackets on. So we slacked off a little bit and didn't get it done as quick. I noticed after putting the engine in the car that we took our battery harness out because we used it at our drift car. We just did here is we have two bad harnesses. This is the ground on the good harness, has a full terminal. This one I cannot get tight, and this wire is all frayed. We have this broken terminal, but this one is nice and factory. So out of the two that have been tampered with, we're gonna fix a factory one. All you gotta do is cut the electrical tape on these grommets, a couple of these tape spots, and you're good to go. Here's our new harness. Now we've got the car all up on blocks. We've got our transmission right here. We're about to throw it in. That's kind of our goal to get done for the night. Gonna get the trans in, get it all bolted up, mounted, at least 5 bell housing bolts, and get our ground for our battery strap in, and we're good to go. It's been a couple days since we were last working on our slick top. Had a couple things come up and ended up losing one of my childhood best friends, so been taking a little bit of time. But anyways, we have just checked our mail and we happened to get this in. So we now have the pintles for our injector, so that means we can go on with trying to get this thing fired up. We're gonna get our pintles on. We got our trans in. I can't remember if I mentioned that. We're gonna get our drive shaft. We're gonna look for test pipes, find all that stuff so we can get the bottom side of the car all finished. We got our shifter all secured. Drive shaft is in. Bolted up to the rear diff. Got my pintles all on. My lower insulators. Conversion kit installed, and we got our injector and fuel rail ready to install. Cleaned up our plugs. Look way better than they did. A little wire brush and brake cleaner. That was fairly easy. Now we have just installed our power steering pump. We're going to plug in our alternator to trans harness, and then we're probably going to see about trimming our plenum and fitting it on unless we have another plenum due to being a new style conversion. Our heater core hoses on, fan, alternator belt. I think I'm going to drop my radiator in here real quick, and after we do that, we're going to head over, grab some dinner, go grab probably Taco Bell or something. Got a chalupa craving right now. What's up, guys? It's the next day. we've got our test pipes out on both sides. I also got my starter out. Fuel lines up here. We found a plenum that we don't have to shave. It's actually a new style, or it was made for the later style injectors. Jumps over about that much, so that way we don't have to grind anything. So that's a huge plus. We also switched over our EGR delete plates, our throttle adjuster or sync screw, a TPS, so we will have to set that before we start the car. Now that it's ready to go on, I have discovered that there's one crucial thing that I do not have before I can move on with about anything today. That's an intake plenum gasket. Closest Felpro gasket we can find is 50 miles away, so we're about to take a trip down to Indianapolis and grab us an intake gasket. About 2 o'clock right now. Doesn't look too bad, but my weather's saying around 5 to 6. There's a chance of rain, and I want to get this done today, so we're gonna go get it done and over with. And my dog is throwing up grass. Watch how fast it starts up. When you get stuck behind a semi that's doing 10 under the speed limit and there's 10 cars behind it that won't pass it. Oh, we officially made it. Package secured. We nearly got back in time for it to rain. Just got our plenum torqued on and all of our coil packs down. ICV pipe, brake booster, and it's starting to rain. We're gonna go wait it out. Hopefully this doesn't stay here all day so we can get the rest of this put together. But we are nearing completion now. Good morning, you guys. So today we've already got out here, started tackling the Z. Got our intake pipes hooked up. We've got the under headlight pipes and our T-pipe, MAF, and filter hooked up. Got all of our PCVs up here on the intakes, our idle air hose. Now I think what we're gonna do, so we're going to start snaking our wiring harness through and get it plugged in. We need to install our fuel lines and fuel rail. Our absolute mess of a wiring harness is now all connected. Fuel rail's on. All we need left is to install these 2 lines. Just grabbed all my O-rings so we can do our balance tube O-rings. Put our balance tube on. Hook our idle air control valve up. That leaves us getting gas and a power steering belt, so we are this close to starting this thing. Well, we're all done with the stuff on the bottom. We just got our exhaust up, starter bolted on. Actually, we're not done with everything. We still have our engine mount nuts. So you can see the stud right there. At this point, all we need, a battery, get our auxiliary cabin power. We also need to set this TPS that is in here just loose. And the final and probably most important thing now, we also need to get us an ignition so we can even turn the key, which we have in here, right there. Let's throw that in and see about getting one more step to cranking this over. So here we've got our TPS hooked up now. Got a 17, or not 17, I got a 7 mil. We've already got adjusted to 0.45, exactly where it needs to be. We're just gonna snug both of these up. Don't snug it too tight. These bolts aren't big. Just as long as they're snug, they're good to go. Now TPS is set. Ignition is on. Or at least is, yep, ignition is on. Best part about small town Indiana is we get to mob on golf carts around town. Well, we sit here and wait 5-10 minutes till we can empty out a whole 10 gallons in here. Alright, now our gas is filled up. Gonna make sure car's in neutral. Now I got everything hooked up, at least from what I can recall. Here's our moment of truth. Guess we need to check a couple things. I don't even know where to start, really. I was just hoping it would fire up and we could move on. We're actually going to throw a battery on the charger tonight. Battery's in. Don't know what else I may need to do. I think we'll turn the key and check the ECU light and make sure that it's on. ECU light is on. Now we're just going to check a couple of our injector connections, make sure our PTU is all hooked up and good. I noticed I didn't have two of these interface plugs connected, so they're in now. I'm going to give it a shot. Well, it's alive. You see these two connections come out the exact same place, and they're the exact same length from 5 to cylinder 6. So we'll just switch them. Maybe it'll make it run better. That's already way better. It's holding idle. Nonetheless, this is super cool. Now we can kind of just put all of it back together. We can start moving it around the yard. We can start working on this thing, getting the body fixed, and returning this back to its former glory. That misfire, I think the issue is with 90 spec or 1990 early style motors. I think it's 90 to 92 with the 30P head casting. They came with softer material intake valves. So over time, those valves wear out and don't fit as flush and seal as good, especially on a cold start. As the engine heats up and the metals expand, they fill the gap more, and that mist goes away. Got our coolant all topped up. Let's go ahead and pull our dipstick just to make sure. I know we've got oil, but yep. Let's warm it up, let's bleed some coolant, and see if we can get this thing to where we can move it around the yard. Make sure we're not in gear, that would be horrible. Now that the car's all warmed up, the operating temperature, it's bled out, it's running, revving good. I just got way too ahead of myself, got super excited, and thought, shoot, I can't wait to drive this up to the house. I can't. I literally can't. What we're about to do is we're going to steal this master cylinder. Once we do that, we're going to install it into my car. Our other line connected to its old slave cylinder. Not the slave we'll be using, but maybe the line we'll be using. So here to remove this, you've got two 12mm bolts, and you've got your feed. That should be a 10mm. Yep. In case you were wondering, S13 chase base line for your clutch does in fact fit a Z32. If it's not for an S13, it's an RB into S13. Should be the same. This fits way better than the Z1 line that's like 5 foot too long, so stoked. I think it's time for us to do what we've been waiting to do for quite some time, and especially since it's been well over a year since we've done this. It's time for the first test that I've been waiting on. Now, this is kind of the real test. I don't recall ever messing with the brakes. I think the brakes should be all good. Yeah, the brakes work. Okay. I think before we go driving it like crazy, we're going to fill up what we can of the power steering fluid, only because it's literally completely empty and I don't want it ruining itself without any fluid. So let's top it up. We're just pulling around in the front yard. We're not driving anywhere. We don't have turn signals on or anything hooked up. Well, something's falling off and I have no idea what it is. Something weird's going on. acting like the trans mount's loose or something, but I know for 100% fact that it is not. Maybe this is just it. I'm just moving this little shifter plate around. Bracket's solid, so there's no reason for it to move around and make noise like what happened. Say it was the bracket causing us the issue. Well, you guys, that's going to be the end of the video. If you can't tell, that's because we need to clean out a couple things here in the shop. Get this box back up there. Get all of my childhood stuff put in my truck. Kayaks out, swapped, whatever. Super stoked that we got the car running today. Super stoked that it runs good, smooth, and just that everything is pretty much working out how I want it to. Now the car's able to move around the yard. We can move it accordingly, start it, whatever, whenever, so we can get this thing repaired and get all of this car brought back to normal in its former glory. Going back on what I said earlier, if you guys are struggling with addiction, no lost pride in seeking help, I promise you. I was at one point, and I managed to make it out. You gotta figure out your priorities, to be honest. I lived every day to get high. Every single day. Did what I had to do to get high. I realized how unhappy I was in the midst of all this. In the midst of getting high with all my friends, I stepped out, quit getting high, and some of them kept getting high and unfortunately went down the wrong road that I don't wish on anyone. I ended up losing a best friend. Someone that I grew up with playing baseball since literally just wee little kid, and we lost him due to addiction. Not to mention my absolute best friend that I lost about 2 years ago. I promise there's more to life than getting that fix every day. As you can see, may not be the most well presented, but these single-handedly take all my money, all my time, all my resources. I don't have time to go out and act and get high and live for myself anymore. I gotta live for you guys, I gotta live for my friends, I gotta live for my family. So, sorry to get kind of deep on you guys. It just crushes me seeing how many people are dying to addiction. It's been weighing on me, and I don't know, I feel like I have the ability to help people, so why not use it? If any of you guys are struggling, shoot me a DM, shoot me a message. I don't care. We'll talk it out. But with that being said, don't forget to drop a like, comment, subscribe down below, and stay tuned for our next video. Peace. And rest in peace, Jesse Brown.